Environmental Advisory Council meeting of Thursday, September 23rd. We are happy to be back, have everybody back from the summer holidays. It's good to see everyone. So let's start off with our review and approval of the meeting minutes. Our last meeting was July 22nd, and those minutes were circulated for review. Does anyone have any comments or corrections to the minutes? No. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, minutes are approved, and thank you once again, Anne, for preparing the minutes. Great job. Next on the agenda are our announcements, and I have a few of them here, but we're going to start off actually announcing that we have a new Planning Commission liaison, Skip Kunda, down here to my left, and we're very happy to have you here. We really appreciated Julia's participation, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you. Do you want to just take a few minutes to introduce yourself? And
Yes, I've been a township resident since 1977. Most of my life I've run a beer wholesaling and retailing business that's 90 years old. I'm also an attorney, and I've been involved in some way, shape, or form with environmental issues since I was a freshman at Villanova. And I have a composter in the backyard.
Terrific. Well, we're always looking for information on people's experiences with composting. So if there's things that you want to tell us about it, how it's going, or hints that you have, we're certainly open to hearing that.
Don't put corn cobs in. They take too long to break down.
Okay. All right. We'll take note of that. Very good. All right. Well, thank you and welcome. And again, I also want to extend our thanks to Julia Hurley. We really appreciated all of her participation over the last year and a half. Okay. Next up, I want to extend our congratulations to Ann Poulin, who, as we all know, was the chair of the building committee for the building of the new law school, Villanova Law School, and they just received their LEED Silver certification. Gold certification for their new building, and we are really excited about that, and we would love to hear more about it when you have the opportunity to make a presentation on it.
I would love to talk about it, and if we want to have a meeting there or do a tour or sometime, I would love to show it off. We're very proud.
Good. Okay, well, we'll get that on the schedule. Terrific. And speaking of green buildings, I wanted to announce that the Delaware Valley Green Building Council is going to be holding their annual Green Building Celebration on Thursday, October 21st, down at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. It's a really nice event. I attended last year. It's their big event of the year, and they showcase folks that have been leaders in green building and have done terrific things to kind of support and promote that. So if anybody is interested in going, I would strongly encourage it. I'll be going. So if you're going to go, we can carpool. It's October 21st, and it's 6:30 to 9 o'clock down at the Franklin Institute. And if you want to register, you can register at DVGBC, Delaware Valley Green Building Council.org. Okay. I also wanted to announce this weekend, this Saturday, in fact, the Radnor Township Police Department, in cooperation with the U.S. DEA and EPA, are sponsoring a drug take-back initiative. So what they're doing is they are encouraging anybody that has unused drugs at home, maybe you have leftover, you'd had a cold or something and you had gotten medicine, either over-the-counter or prescription drugs, that you're just not using. And the DEA is very interested in just getting all these excess drugs out of people's medicine cabinets, so if you want to get rid of them, it's a nice way to get rid of them. EPA is supporting it because from their perspective, probably better that they be brought back and that they be disposed of properly rather than being flushed down the toilet and getting into the water systems and things like that. So that will be this Saturday, September 25th from 10 to 2 p.m., and there will be a collection site here at the Township building. They will be collecting controlled, non-controlled, and over-the-counter substances, but only pills. So no liquids or IVs or injectables or anything like that, just the pills. And for those that are concerned about it, the program is anonymous, so you can come and drop off your drugs, and you don't have to, have them labeled or anything like that. So we encourage you to do that if you've got that hanging around the house. You'd like to clean out some medicine cabinets and dispose of them properly. Now's a good time to do it. Okay. 2 more. Wanted to announce a native plant sale. We've been talking about native plant sales in the area, and there's going to be one coming up here in actually in Wayne, although in the TE section of Wayne. And this will be at the Duportai House, for any of you that may be familiar with that. That's over in Chesterbrook near Valley Forge Park. It will be on Saturday, October 9th from 10 to 2. And the Yellow Springs Farm Native Plants Nursery is going to be providing the plants. And they will also be having a composting workshop at noon if you want to stop by and talk to them about the corn cob issue. Maybe they have some hints. And it's being sponsored by the Duportai House Board of Directors and the Tredyffrin Township EAC. There is information about it on their website, so if anybody wants to check that out, you can. Good opportunity if you're thinking of getting some plantings for the fall.
What is their website?
And
I was just going to ask what the website was.
oh, let me see. I don't have the address here.
Yellow Springs Farm website or the Duportai?
I know,
Probably
probably the,
the EAC and the Duportai. Yeah.
if you look under the Tradition Township.
Okay. Okay, and then my final announcement is regarding a new energy program. This is an Energy Works program that we had received notice regarding. The Energy Coordinating Agency of Philadelphia is going to be administering a new program that is designed to encourage energy efficiency in the home. So they are offering rebates for home energy audits and low-interest loans for retrofits. And I'm just going to read this. I hate to do it, but it's a little bit complicated the way it works. So I just want to make sure that I get it right. I'm going to read it off of here. So the City of Philadelphia received a $25 million grant from the Department of Energy. And using a portion of those funds, this Energy Coordinating Agency of Philadelphia is going to administer this new residential energy program called Energy Works, designed to spur home retrofitting for energy efficiency. So the Energy Works program will require the homeowners to have their house analyzed to assess its energy efficiency, so basically an energy audit. And that energy audit's going to be done by some certified building analysts, and after the audit, then the homeowner will be given recommendations on improvements for energy efficiency. The Energy Coordinating Agency will refer the homeowners to participating contractors, and if you then proceed with any of the recommended retrofits, they will give you a rebate of $300 on the home energy audit. Sorry, if you complete more than $1,000 of retrofitting work, they will give you this $300 rebate. So if anybody is interested in doing that, I mean, it's a good incentive. I would go to ECA Save Energy, ECASaveEnergy.org.
And 2 E's like save and then energy, or is it 1 E?
Sorry, I'll just read it off. It's ECA Saves Energy.
Saves Energy, yeah.
ECASAVESENERGY.org.
And this is available to not just Philadelphia residents.
That's correct. It's available to people in Bucks, Chester, Delaware, Montgomery, and Philadelphia counties.
And I would just say I did go to their website to check it out. It's got an interesting, pretty broad program, including some job training for folks who are learning how to do audits in the area. And they were working with a block in Philadelphia that had put on, I think, cool green roofs, an entire block. So this looks like a pretty dynamic group. I don't think it's a government agency. I think
No, it's a nonprofit,
A nonprofit,
right?
But it looks like a pretty interesting group, and I think it's a timely thing to do given the rate caps coming off early next year for the PICO
Right.
customers. So I think it's a great time to reach out, get an audit done. And these guys, I guess, have vetted a lot of the service providers, so it's a
Right.
good first step
Mm-hmm.
in doing that.
Right. Okay, very good. Does anyone else have announcements? No? Okay. All right. Very good. Now, the next item on our agenda I have down is collaboration with Shade Tree Commission. And so let me just set this up a little bit. We had been talking at the EAC over the course of several meetings about the fact that there are likely synergies between what Shade Tree is doing and what we are doing, and we should start talking about that and see how we might be able to cooperate and coordinate, support one another's programs. And subsequent to that, I know Josh and I were talking about our greenhouse gas action plan and how perhaps maybe some of the things that Shade Tree gets involved in might be things that would have some connection to what we're thinking about with action items. So we invited Howard Holden, who is chair of the Shade Tree Commission, to come tonight and to talk to us about some of those things. So thank you for being here, Howard.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me. I've been on the Shade Tree Commission, I guess, since, well, 1991 we started to first put the Shade Tree Commission together. And I served 2 terms. I took, I guess, 5 years off, and now I'm the second of my second term. So I'm not going to be with them much longer, but I will do what I can to help collaborate between us and you. The big issue on the Shade Tree Commission at this time is the large canopy tree loss. That's one of our most significant emphasis when we have our meetings with various developers. What has brought this to our attention is the greenhouse gas issue, for sure. But also, for example, in Chester County, they've lost approximately 50% of their large canopy trees in 5 years' time. Wow. So unless people stand up and start recognizing what's going on, we don't want that to happen in Radnor. Ways in which we are trying to implement that is we will be amending our ordinance. The ordinance, again, was written excuse me, back in 1991. And at the time, the emphasis was more on the disappearance of the estates. The estates were, in essence, falling to developers. The developers were coming in and clear-cutting and weren't putting anything of substance back in. So that's what the ordinance was about at that time. We were also concerned about our dying street trees, the trees that had been planted 100 years ago when the community was first formed. However, we're now focusing the ordinance to meet today's demands, and today's demands are more about large canopy trees, changing some of the recommended species that were first implemented in the original Shade Tree Commission. And we're also discussing woodland protection plans. The woodland protection plan for us right now is somewhat of a backseat issue. We want to take care of the amendments of the actual Shade Tree Commission ordinance before we envelop the woodland plan.
And do you have proposed amendments already drafted, or you're working on developing
We're in the process of drafting them. And also, one of the other issues that is of significance in the shade tree business is enforcement. I was just sitting in your seat last night, and developers are coming before us, and we're working through issues. Once they leave the room and go out and do what they do, sometimes if we go back and visit the site, they're not doing what they said they were going to do.
Do you regularly go and visit the site, or does somebody at the township have designated responsibility to
It's
do
more
that?
the township has designated responsibility. We are an advisory council only. We are not at all an enforcement body. But trying to figure out how to assist the township in that enforcement process is one of our big issues right now as well. Some of the fees that were set, for fines or escrows or whatever, again, have not kept up over the course of time. So we're visiting those. We're also visiting the process by which arborists are licensed in the township, and should they have an annual renewal of their license, much as any other contractor would have, and be an approved arborist in the township. I was having a discussion with some of my committee last night, and I said this summer has been very troublesome. I get up around 6 in the morning, and I live over in North Wayne, and I have breakfast, and I read the paper, and the birds are chirping, and then at 7 o'clock, when the ordinance says, the noise ordinance says, go to town, you hear all the chainsaws come on. So I drive all through North Wayne and say, okay, well, they're doing the right thing. I know that tree. Well, there's no name tree company. And look at that tree they're taking down. So then, we call the township and say, can we go question that group? But trying to get a better handle on that. We don't want Radnor to be seen as a timbering exercise. There are lots of great mature trees in this township, and that makes lots of nice wood. So trying to figure out how to slow that down a little bit.
So in addition to the concern about developers taking down trees for development, have you considered whether more trees ought to be planted, like as an initiative outside of, either in the parks or things that the township would have some control over or could encourage people?
Yeah, we have had some success in that area. We certainly work well with Park and Rec, and sometimes when one of the developer's plans comes before us, especially with the tear downs that have been were happening very frequently in the past, the lot size is confined. The smaller house comes down, a larger house is put on it, and there's not enough room to put as many trees back in as our compensatory planting requires. So we've worked with the Parks and Rec group and said, okay, well, if we can't plant them on that property, then we can require that we will plant them in parks, or we will use them along streets or in other schools or wherever. And that's worked to some extent. We've also partnered with Chanticleer Foundation and with the Radnor Conservancy. And between the two of them, not only from a voluntary effort of knowledge and follow-through, but also from a monetary support system, both groups have put some money forward towards the planting of trees in Radnor Township. And we are focusing currently along the Route 30 corridor. The Route 30 corridor has never seriously been addressed in the time that the Shade Tree Commission has been in place. We've focused a lot on street trees in other areas of Radnor, but not necessarily on the corridor. The double whammy the corridor is feeling right now is that the mature trees that are along Route 30 there's a good number of black oaks. And black oaks are currently suffering from something called bacterial leaf scorch, and there's no particular cure for it, and it's taking them down left and right. And this summer is particularly difficult because the trees are stressed. Once something is stressed, if a disease hits it, it takes it down even faster. And we're watching a lot of death of the black oaks. So.
Excuse me. So just to see if I understand the issue you were talking about with the large canopy trees, I mean, you're finding, my question has always been whether residents even realize, like, who it is that needs to know. If you have a certified arborist, they should know that, like, what's the diameter of a tree, at which point that they need to get a permit to take it down. Is there a certain size?
Any tree, and this is one of the other issues that we're addressing in our ordinance revision, any tree over 36 inches is considered a heritage tree. Certainly large canopy, and any tree over 36 inches anywhere in the township, they're supposed to come before a shade tree commission before it's removed, and we decide whether there's some other way we can work around that tree.
Because I do think residents tend to, if that heritage tree tends to be putting shade on their tomatoes, they take it down. And I mean, there's little recourse, and I'm sure enforcement. I mean, are there penalties in place, or do arborists supposedly know, all the ones who are licensed know that?
All the ones that are quote unquote approved in the township.
And developers know as well?
Yep. But there are.
So your worry is just people with a saw and.
Yeah, there have been cases in the not too distant past where, again, somebody hears a chainsaw first thing in the morning and they look out their window and down comes, a 40-inch tree. And it's some no-name company, and by the time you get a hold of the township, and they go out and do what they have, the tree's half down already. So that's one of the big issues. The way it's set up now, the homeowner is the one that's supposed to pay the fine. In our ordinance, we're going to change that to say, no, the tree company is also going to take the hit, because if they work here, they know that a 36-inch tree is a heritage tree.
Whereas homeowners may not know.
Homeowners perhaps don't know. And that's another issue, is how do we educate all our homeowners?
And that might be somewhere where the EAC could help out as well.
Yeah.
Because, a heritage tree, just to clarify, how old?
A 36-inch tree, you're close to 100 years old.
Right, so even if you're just with the question about planting, you don't quite catch up.
Right,
if
exactly.
you lose all your heritage trees.
Yeah. We are seriously considering reducing that diameter down to 30-inch, or maybe even less, in order to help preserve the large canopy, getting back to the greenhouse gas issue and the climate warming and all that sort of thing. So,
Have you recently put on any educational programs for the community regarding Shade Tree Commission and regarding the shade tree rules and things like that?
no, we haven't done anything recently. There's been a significant amount of change in the Shade Tree Commission makeup itself, and it looks like we've got a stable body now, and now we're considering how can we work with the township and others to do that.
Okay. Because if that would be something that you'd be interested in, we'd be happy to, help coordinate that and, make sure that, you can sort of, we're always advocating, educating the community on the theory that once people know about these things, they're more likely to pay attention and talk to their neighbors if they see something going on than if they don't. So.
Yeah, we were in a meeting with the township, about a month ago, and we discussed even perhaps just something as simple as a threefold flyer that is mailed out to all the residents in Radnor, reminding them of there is a shade tree ordinance. You can find it at this site.
We could also, there's a Radnor green icon on the Radnor.com webpage.
Okay.
And we could do a link there, and as well we do newsletters and web pages with the school district that a lot of parents of students, I think, do read a lot of that. So we could help electronically with getting information like that out. And even, the schools send like little email, like blasts or whatever. And they would probably be amenable to, because I do think this, people don't know.
No.
And they don't know, and even if they kind of know.
They have their priorities.
Yeah.
And I'll point out the obvious that the emails take less trees than the pamphlets.
Yep.
Can I ask you about the planting of trees in the township? You had mentioned that there was a cooperation with the Conservancy and with Chanticleer. And you also mentioned that homeowners who can't plant the appropriate number of trees at their yard are encouraged to, or required to plant in public spaces. Does the township have any funds that they set aside for, let's say, improvement of parks and public spaces that they say, okay, we're going to plant a certain amount of trees this year? I mean, do they budget for that type of work?
I can't speak necessarily for the parks. There used to be a tree planting budget, and from what I understand, that's no longer in the cutting processes. That had to be one of the things they took out. Once we heard that, that's when we started seeking other sources of funding. And Chanticleer has very graciously stepped to the plate.
With the
Radnor
planting of those large canopy trees, I can speak for the school where my children go, which is Wayne Elementary School, which again has somewhere where you have a ton of sunlight. And I know Leo Burnaby, who I've spoken with from the school district, about the issues of the trees. That might be an ideal location to plant a nice large tree. I mean, the teachers would like shade at recess, and he said there are no liability issues, that he would be happy to have a properly planted trees, and that just might be somewhere to plant some of those great trees that there's really no space for. So,
Right.
And I'm sure Ithan Elementary is the same thing. They have lots of open space.
Yep.
And if a resident wanted to help out, can they donate a tree, or is there a recommended way to help? And if so, how much does it cost?
Yeah. Usually get a decent sized tree in the ground, you're talking somewhere between $300 and $500. That's like 2-inch caliber, and depending on what the species is, 2.5 to 3-inch, which is even better. You're more up around the $500 range.
And that is something at the schools that's been discussed. Like when their kids graduate from elementary school, they kind of want to buy something for the school or for the area. And I know I've been approached by buying shrubs or trees. Like you could get a graduating class of 5th graders to, plant and care for a tree. It would be a nice program and would also probably help with awareness that it's an issue.
So is there a mechanism for somebody who said, I'd like to donate a tree? Can they go to the shade tree, or do they go to the township? Or?
It would have to go, through the township, and then there should be some kind of a dedicated fund. That is what I don't know exists anymore, but it's something we could suggest and look into.
I wonder, too, if you're revising the ordinance, whether it makes sense to consider a provision in there that would set up a fund to which residents or others could donate. And once you've got that set up, then there's a mechanism, and then you can put it on the website or whatever. And if you want to donate a tree, click here, how much, and, add it to the pot. That's a good idea.
Or people could buy those energy credits, like... What is that whole? I don't know the terminology.
Renewable energy credits.
Yeah. So so you chop down the tree and you're like, "Oops, sorry." Well, what can I do now? And say, "Well, as a matter of fact, you need to replace it with a canopy tree."
Yep.
Easier said. I'm sure enforcement.
Does the Shade Tree Commission get involved in? You had mentioned that you were putting together a revised list of the tree species that were approved. And those would be different types of trees depending on the application, right? A street tree would probably have a different list than a canopy tree.
Right.
Right. Do you guys get involved in discussing or concerns about invasive species or species that are not welcome in this area for whatever reasons?
Yep.
And do you also, if you could talk a little bit about that and a little bit about the threats that we have to some species like the emerald ash borer and the one you had mentioned is the blight. You called it a blight? A scorch.
Yeah, it's the bacterial leaf scorch of the oaks, of the black oak family. Yeah, we... people will come in with Lombardy poplar as one of the trees they're going to put in, and we say no. Norway maple, no. We're trying to, and even they'll come in. We had one plan not too long ago, And they were taking, it was a significantly wooded property, and they were taking down lots of trees, and they were coming back and saying that they wanted to plant orchard trees as compensatory trees, and we said no. Paulownia is a no. I mean, there are lots of invasive species that.
Do you have a list of recommended?
There is a list of recommended trees on the
And that's recently
Township
updated?
website, yeah. But again, we're going to amend that even more. And we're considering if we need to amend some of what I'm going to call the more decorative trees. Sometimes people will come back and, one of the compensatory tree, you take down a 40-inch oak, and they come back, well, we'll plant 3 dogwoods. No. It's just not the same animal. So we've got to change the ordinance so people understand that, it's a different tree. So even though it's on the list, it doesn't count as a compensatory tree for that takedown.
And that's also where you run into the issue of, is there enough space to plant that compensatory tree?
Yep.
That's tricky.
When you identify the compensatory trees or otherwise making judgments about what trees need to be planted where, are you also taking into consideration or taking into account the fact that these trees may be serving a purpose of addressing stormwater, like the uptake of the stormwater, and without that tree, then you're just going to have more runoff, and how those things interrelate? That's something that we've talked about here previously at the EAC.
We just had a plan come before us last night. And part of the development is right on the border of a wetland. We encouraged them to move a driveway to the south, create a wider band between that driveway they were suggesting and the wetland, and to consider planting white oaks in that band of trees. So, the riparian and wetland issue is definitely, that's in our mind as we're reviewing plans.
So we've had some ideas presented here, and you certainly have a host of ideas that you're planning to pursue with regard to the ordinance. But as you know, we're working on this greenhouse gas action plan, and certainly trees are great for that. So I'm trying to think how we might be able to coordinate some of the ideas that we've had here. We don't want to say, oh, Shade Tree Commission, we have all these ideas, go do that. We want to see what we can do to help you. And so I'm trying to sort of think about the best way to do that, and whether there's ideas and things that you have, some of which you think you can pursue through the ordinance, and other things that you wish you could pursue, but you're just not sure if you have, the people or the time to do that, and whether there's things that perhaps we could help with on that end. Particularly since, it may be something we can even put into the plan and get even more help than just the people here, but, the township as a whole, sort of a different route.
Right. One of the things that we're going through for the woodland protection, we're working with Matt here at the township regarding just aerial views of the township and comparing, say, an aerial view of woodlands now as compared to, say, 5 years ago. Maybe there is some way that you can throw a rough number at the greenhouse gas effects, and he can literally take his aerial maps and suggest how many acres less of a woodland we have now than we used to. Maybe there's some way, there's some magic formula out there that helps you predict what that greenhouse gas effect is. I don't know.
Right. And just to be clear, so the greenhouse gas action plan that we'll be doing will include actions to increase the benefits. So we can evaluate, whether we have less woodlands or more. But if there's perhaps ideas, whether it be donation to plant trees or some budgeting for tree planting that we, ought to think about putting into the action plan. And I know budgets are tight and things like that. But I guess the idea about having people donate, folks are always willing to donate to specific items, I think. You know, if you think those things might have some validity and from your perspective would be good and not get in the way of what you're trying to do, then maybe those are some things we can pursue together.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Sure.
All right, one more question about your purview. Shade Tree Commission, is it strictly limited to those, like only trees larger than 20 feet tall, or is there some kind of a, you know, if somebody said there's a Japanese knotweed problem, that's not your purview probably, right? That's an invasive species, and that I have some interest in, but it probably doesn't come up in your meetings, right?
Well, some of it, yeah, it does sometimes get on that level. You know, I'm a horticulturist by trade, and I helped start Chanticleer 30-some years ago. And Bill Thomas is from Chanticleer. He sits on the board. So we're kind of doing a little bit of horticultural consulting while we're up here, trying to help guide people, because a lot, like you said, a lot come in and they're clueless. They really don't know. I don't think we've gotten down to the knotweed problem yet, but we do try to offer as much sound advice and encourage native species as much as possible.
I have a question. Are you doing any work with the trail or on the trail, making suggestions? There's probably a third of it, I think, is Norway maples that have just grown up. The diversity's not there. There's a lot of trees that are starting to fail there that could, create a safety hazard too. And this would be a timely moment to make suggestions for replacement trees and by species and everything else.
And I would think with the trail, if you did anything, it would be nice to post what you did, because so many people are on the trail and they have a little extra time on the trail to read. If you were taking down a tree or putting one up, it would be a great education opportunity to just put a little post. I mean, if you've ever, I don't know how much you go on the trail, but it's just, I think the kind of people who use the trail would definitely stop and read it. And I would be very interested in anything with the education. Through the EAC, we have a township website, but also through the elementary schools, any kind of, things like definition of a shade tree.
Right.
A lot of people think it's a tree that grows in the shade.
Right.
And the definition of it is very visual, and I think children and families would be very receptive to it.
Yeah. I'm currently director of facilities at Cabrini College, and I don't know why she was here tonight or not, but we hosted Radnor Township's Arbor Day ceremony over at the college this past year when we brought in the middle school's watershed program, and they had some 50 kids in there, and we planted a nice big bur oak and had them right in there working with us and describe the whole process.
Great.
And yeah, we did some deer fencing behind our science building, and we're using that to educate our own students as to succession in forests, and if you have deer, why your succession fails, and so yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say there's lots of suggestions, but now there's several people on the Conservancy that are also very interested in helping promote what we're trying to do in the township. The greatest thing that we could do in this township is actually hire professional arborists full-time on staff. That would take care of a lot of the problems. But probably $70,000 a year by the time all said and done, because you've got to get somebody that's a professional. They're going to have a wage, they're going to have benefits, they're going to need an automobile or some kind of.
So tell me what they would do. They would ride around looking for people with hacksaws, or
that would be one of their.
They would. Yeah. When someone had a request for a permit, they might drive out there.
Yeah.
Like would they like a connection with the permit what are they called?
Or the engineering division.
Yeah, the engineers. So that's what they would, so it would be more of the idea of a constant monitoring almost as much
Yeah, it would
as.
be that. It could also
Consulting.
be, writing grants, seeking funding, all the stuff that, we're just volunteers. All of us on the Shade Tree Commission have full-time jobs like you all do, and we don't have time to do that. So.
Have you heard of any townships that have arborists?
Oh, yeah. There's many. Yeah, Lower Merion has full-time arborist, has had a full-time arborist for many years, and that would go a long way. But that's not going to happen right now. So.
Well, we're lucky we have you then. Does anyone else have any questions?
One last comment. I was thinking about the education aspect of people don't realize they have heritage trees, and tying it in with some kind of a volunteer thing, whether it's middle school or the Boy Scout troop or whatever, that you would selectively canvass neighborhoods and say, and maybe it'd be kind of fun to measure the tree and all that, getting the landowners permission, and then you send them or drop off a leaflet that says, congratulations, you have a heritage tree, and please take care of it, and by the way, the law says if you ever have to take it down, notify us. And that way it's very targeted.
Yep.
Somebody that has 5 little trees, they don't really, by the time they care, it'll be 10 or 15 years from now.
Yeah. Yep.
Just an idea, and volunteers could be involved with that, and it'd be a community thing too.
Yeah. Now, we did contact Manny, the watershed program, several years ago, and she was going to try to implement a program like that with which she would take her students out and actually canvass an area and look for the heritage trees, and then through GPS and all, actually plot the trees and have an inventory of large canopy trees in various neighborhoods.
I'm sure Watershed is like you guys, though. Like,
Yep.
everyone's probably like, oh, I have a great project for the
Yep.
Watershed. So, again, Eagle Scouts, who would have a
Yep.
project, and as EPS systems get easier, I do think there are opportunities. And, again, you may not have the time to, to think of it, and that might be where we could help out.
Okay. I think there was a scout troop just this past fall. It went through and knocked on doors and said, do you want a tree? I think they had just small little 1 gallon kind of things. Yeah. Did you? Okay, good.
Well, yeah, and then there's the tree education, how to plant a tree.
I'll take care of it.
Then sell the water gators for,
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this has been very educational for all of us, and we really
Okay.
appreciated the opportunity to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll follow up on some of these items with you, but certainly I want to invite you, to the extent that you have ideas, your group has ideas, but you don't have the ability to implement them because you don't have enough person power, to reach out to us and see if there's ways that we can help.
Okay.
All right?
All righty.
Okay. Thank you so
Again,
much.
thank you. Thanks for
All
inviting
right,
me again.
Very good. Thanks.
Curious to see how my article shows up.
Right.
Hopefully I still have a job.
All right, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda are the work group reports, although I'm going to probably make a few changes on the agenda. I know, Anne, you have a conflict you need to...
I need to leave as soon as I can.
Okay, so, and you have a conflict too. Okay, Anne, why don't we take your reports first, and then we'll do Josh, and we'll follow everything after
Okay.
that.
I've been working with the, I've been working with the Conservancy Group on the next installment in the sustainability programs, and we've locked in a date for November 29th, which is the Monday after Thanksgiving. And we really care about turnout for this, so I really urge all of you to come and bring a friend. We're going to, the topic as it's evolved is going to be zoning to preserve open space, sort of conservancy zoning. And Natural Lands Trust is sending 1 or 2 speakers to talk about their Growing Greener program. They have a comprehensive set of zoning zoning laws that you can kind of copy and drop into your program that are more modern than ours. Ours do not really urge developers to do conservancy-oriented development. So we're going to have speakers from the Natural Lands Trust. We're also going to have a developer who some of you may know named Chip Vaughn, who worked with them on a development called Traymore down in Rose Valley, which it has a number of features that make it appropriate for conservation development. So he's going to talk about that. I've seen some literature on it. It's quite an impressive development. So this is something that we're really interested in educating the township about, and that program is going to be November 29th right here. So please plan on coming if you can.
And when you say the township, you mean residents of the township?
Excuse me?
Do you mean residents of the township or employees of the township? I'm just looking for clarification.
You mean
you
as
said
far
you
as
want to, I'm just wondering who you're
educate
targeting.
everybody who has anything to do with the township and the idea of how Radnor should deal with its very scarce open space.
Right.
don't know if
I
that-
know there's been an issue with people turning up for these events, and I do think we should ask why maybe we're not advertising them in the right way or be clear on who the audience is to. So just when you said we're educating the township, I'm just trying to wonder as a homeowner what part of that I'm going to be interested in. You know, like that's,
Well,
and I don't mean this is sounding antagonistic, and that's not how I mean it. I'm just trying to understand it because I do think there is an issue with low turnout, and it just may be people are not, they're watching at home. But I was genuinely asking, is it for the township or is it?
I think it's an issue on which everybody needs to be educated. We're hoping that some of the people who are involved in actually deciding what the zoning provisions in the township will come, but also the decisions are made by people who are responsive to the voters in the township. So it's important for the township voters to come and be educated. We don't have a lot of open space left, and right now our zoning ordinances don't require developers to be especially conservancy-minded as they develop that open space. So this is we have a small window of opportunity. That's why the program is targeted toward zoning ordinances as opposed to other types of open space preservation.
And did you tell everybody what that small window of opportunity is about? Why this is timely? Because the zoning ordinances are being reviewed this year.
Right, the zoning ordinances are being reviewed, so this is the time to get this, to focus on this and think about what we want to do in terms of open space zoning.
Right. So I would suggest that in advertising it, that you give a little bit about why this is important and timely.
Okay, thank you, good. And the other thing that I guess I'm reporting on is the open space committee. The open space subcommittee had met. We've looked at a lot of the open space plans from surrounding townships that have comprehensive plans. Radnor's open space plan is a very, very small part of the 1991 comprehensive plan, and it's so limited in its focus that it isn't going to help Radnor get available funding from a whole range of sources. So Radnor needs to update Radnor's in the process of updating its comprehensive plan, or will be, and this is going to have to be a big piece of that. So the Open Space Committee met yesterday evening and decided to make a recommendation to the commissioners that they encourage the Open Space Subcommittee to continue exploring these options, look for funding in order to do an open space plan because it can be expensive, and also to authorize the township personnel to work with the committee because they have a lot of the information that we would need. So that's what's going on.
And, I guess I want to underscore to the point that you had made, this was back on the sustainability series, that a lot of the topics that we've been presenting in the sustainability series, some may be directed toward the homeowner, and it's really obvious, energy use in the home. Wow, that's something I want to learn about in my home. But for a lot of these topics, they are broader. And what we're trying to do is educate everybody in the township about some of these issues, and some of them may be directly applicable to you, in your home, and some may be more community-wide, but unless we have everybody educated and understanding what the issues are, then we're not going to be able to really effectively have our leaders take action on any of these things. So I think that's an important aspect of it too, when you bring up the point, well, what would a homeowner say, and what would a homeowner think? Why would they think it's important?
Or not
I think
even a
we need to-
homeowner. I'm just saying, who is your audience? And if you're having low participation, you need to think of who you're inviting and who you're directing that at. That's all that I was saying. I'm not saying it has to be about the owner, the resident, or who do you want to be here, and then direct it at that.
Well, one of the things that we've been talking about in terms of turnout is trying to make sure that we get as many of the commissioners as we can there, and as many representatives from all the relevant committees within the township, which includes the EAC. So I really do hope that members of the EAC will come, because we're in a position to make recommendations to the commissioners. We're also hoping that members of the Planning Commission will come, the Shade Tree Commission. So I think that we're targeting less kind of the random homeowner that may or may not be interested than we are targeting the people who have an active role in making and in influencing these decisions for the township, and trying to get them to come out for this program, because it's a very it is an important question, and it's one where there are clear solutions. There are solutions that have been adopted by other townships, that have been implemented, that are effective, that will make a difference to the future of the entire township. So that's I think what we see as our target audience for this particular presentation.
Yeah, 'cause that's just helpful to know who you're.
Right. No, I think the point is good, and we should certainly think about that and who the target audience. But if you ask me, I'd like everybody to come out, and I'd like everybody to be interested in this. But you're right. We need to make sure that the decision makers or the people that are active and engaged are there.
So I hope everybody will plan on coming.
Absolutely. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Josh, do you have anything to report on? I know you need to get out to.
Well, not so much. As you know, we've had about a 2 month or 3 month hiatus in
Right.
activity in our greenhouse gas action planning efforts. But we've actively started it back up again, as we're planning to meet with some of the township employees or officials who we haven't yet had interviewed.
Who missed our first meeting.
Who missed our
right.
first meeting, yep. And so hopefully in the next few months we can have that phase wrapped up, and we'll be able to report next month on how we're progressing. So, but right now, not so much.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So getting back to the agenda then. Let's go pick it up with the Water Sense program. Sloan, you can report out on how
Yes,
things went at Fall Festival.
We had a fun time at the Fall Festival, the Radnor Fall Festival. Thanks to the Radnor Conservancy for letting us share their table, and it was right front and center in at the festival. Jay Jr. And Beverly Barnes from the Conservancy, John Fisher, others were there, obviously educating folks about the Conservancy, what their efforts are focused on, including some interesting ideas around the trail, and putting some new signs up that they're fundraising for, those beautiful, detailed historical signs. And I was there showing the flag for Water Sense. We had the EPA had sent us some good brochures called Simple Steps for Saving Water. So was able to hand out quite a few of those. And the ones that are left, we've put out at the township stand right out here by the front desk. So
Excellent. Excellent.
that was.
And
was a lot of fun.
and those brochures are nice. They are really simple steps. They're things that
Right.
everybody can do. So
That's right. It's not just, the appliances. There are a lot of good ideas about appliances, and detailed list of water-efficient appliances are available on the EPA WaterSense site, faucets and toilets and shower heads and all that. But in addition, it's a series of suggestions on how to go about life in a water-efficient way. Washing dishes in a certain way and taking showers in a certain way, working with your lawn in a certain way. So, people can look at that and sort of think about how they can be most efficient in their daily life, and, hopefully take some of the ideas away.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being out there and representing the EAC and
Yep.
distributing the information. I think that's fabulous. And for anybody who happens to be in the township, please pick up a brochure if you're in the building, or go right to the Radnor Green on the website, or actually even on the Radnor homepage. There's a WaterSense icon that you can click right on to get all of the WaterSense information.
Right,
And that is radnor.com, and then you go to the homepage.
.org. Radnor.org.
.org.
.org,
Okay.
right.
Excuse me, radnor.org.
Okay.
I just want to
That's right.
Good.
sorry,
No, very
clarify
good.
if
Good.
you're going to go.
And there are multiple brochures, not just the simple steps, but the EPA site has multiple brochures. So there's a lot of good resources.
And we had talked about our annual report that's due to EPA,
That's
but you
right.
said
It's not. I
not
talked
due.
to the WaterSense people. The annual report of our activities is due early next year.
Okay.
They do it one time for all the WaterSense partners, townships, and environmental groups. They'll send a reminder to the township. It'll probably go to Matt, who is the primary WaterSense contact. So Matt will get that, and they said it would come out in the next month or two. Just a reminder with a date, and when that happens, we can certainly help Matt fill out a report on our activities.
Excellent. Great. Very good.
One thing with the WaterSense is Josh is working with me on Radnor Green, which is at the elementary schools, and we're at Wayne Elementary School, but also working together with Radnor and Ithan. And we were hoping to come up with a WaterSense. There are house teams in the elementary school where the kids get together for like an hour, and they're I don't know what you would call it. They're not intergenerational, but you have kindergartners and fifth graders all working together. But it's kind of one point in the curriculum when it's really open, and we could approach the principals to do some WaterSense activity education, which would be nice to include in the report. And it's a great time of year to kind of pin that down.
And WaterSense does have on its site some materials targeted for kids.
Yeah, and teacher materials as
And
well.
so that hopefully can be useful in
Okay.
the effort.
Great. Very good. Let us know if you do end up doing that, because obviously we'll want to include
Okay,
that in
so-
the report. And
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay. Very good. Heather, community environmental awareness. Is there anything to report on there?
Just we're at the beginning of with the schools. It is the beginning of the school year, so people are kind of getting their green committees started at the schools. As I said, Josh is now
Great.
at the same school I am, so he'll be helping with that. But our hope, one question that's come up in the meetings is the issue of availability of information on green topics, whether it's an energy auditor, the things that we have on our green page, and whether you duplicate things and have them at the school, or how you really create a way of interconnecting them all to make the information as easy as possible, so that if people are going in through school sites, if they can then link on to the Radnor Green website or onto the WaterSense. So really just thinking how people can get information easily. And that's my question too with the shade tree, just that people don't know. And but so that's really on the internet, is thinking about how to get the information out, and producing monthly newsletters or bi-weekly, just little bits of information to help people with all. That you could have a theme, you could have one on shade tree, then you can have one on recycling batteries, and how to do that, but then archive them and have them accessible. And it seems like if that's done, it ought to be available to within the school district, but also within the township, without duplicating that
Are you
effort.
saying that the school committees are going to be writing those articles, or are you saying you're trying
Right,
to link
so the school
to something
committees
that's
have
out
in the
there?
past
Okay.
written those articles and had them, and some of them might be as small as just linking to certain websites and a few things, although some have been extensive about trashless lunches or, plastic bags. But I had asked Josh if he would do it. He did the geothermal at his house, to have something to really, just very simply, it doesn't have to be comprehensive. It doesn't. That's, I think, where it gets tricky. What you might do for a school, it's kind of like a little education piece versus something that seems township.
I wonder if you got onto the kids section of the EPA website,
That's
whether
a great
they
idea.
might have a regular email for kids, because I know they send
that would
me
be great.
regular emails of adult environmental
great idea.
material, but they might have a kid program too.
Great, that's a great idea.
Okay. All right, very good. Thank you. Okay, and now, Skip, we have this section on our agenda, and it appears regularly, which is entitled Liaison Reports, so that our liaisons have an opportunity to update us on issues that are going on in their committees and commissions. Don't feel like you have to come with a report every time, but if there are issues that you think, either the EAC may want to know about or you may want input, that's the opportunity to bring it to our attention.
Actually, is one thing that occurred at the most recent meeting. We're looking at a redevelopment of a site next to the trail,
Okay.
and it's D'Antonio paving. And one of the questions that was raised by one of the commissioners planning commission members was that is there a requirement for any sort of level 1 audit, and under township law or statute. And apparently, according to Dan Malloy, there is not. So this might be something to look at down the road through maybe this group, make a recommendation that there should be, in some way, a level 1 audit for, at a minimum, a property that's a commercial property that's being redeveloped into residential
So when you say
use.
level 1, are you talking about like a phase 1 site assessment?
Or something else. But something, in other words, right now, there's no requirement at all. So there's no duty for the township engineer to determine if oil's ever been spilled on the site or anything like that, kind of a thing.
So is there a new owner involved? Is that
No.
how it's, no.
In this particular case, no. But there is a new use. It's being all the buildings are going to be taken down, and they're going to build somewhere between 12 and 14 townhouses. But
Okay.
it's been a paving contractor series of outbuilding sheds, et cetera, for at least 60 or 70 years. And I'm not trying to suggest that anything is wrong.
Right.
Or that that's the kind of thing you have to investigate, but apparently there's no requirement that the township investigate or require an investigation as part of the application process. So it's just food for thought for the group here.
Right.
If you want to recommend some amendment to the zoning code or whatever.
I'm an environmental lawyer, as
I
you know,
know.
and it would seem to me that it would be in the best interest of the redeveloper, if they're going to change from a commercial to a residential use, to check things out ahead of time rather than have any surprises down the road. But
And
perhaps,
also, if they're trying to get financing, I can't think of a bank that'll lend you money if
I
you don't
agree.
have one.
I
But
agree.
the township doesn't get to see that either. And township doesn't get to comment on the remediation, if any, right now, under law.
Well, usually, though, if they're undertaking a remediation under Pennsylvania's Act 2 statute, there is a requirement to give the municipality
Oh, okay.
notice of it. So they are supposed to get a letter. That is, if they're cleaning it up under the program. So people can undertake a remediation and not go through the program, but by going through the program, those people actually get liability protection. So it's better to do that. But part of that involves giving notice to the municipality and publishing notice in the newspaper that that's happening.
That's why you're a chairman, of course.
Yeah, well,
No, I just meant
yeah.
that it was an issue that had arisen.
right. That's interesting.
And
Okay.
if you have a way to improve life in the township by changing the law, I'm just offering it out as an idea.
Okay. Well, that's something we should consider at least. Okay, good. Thank you. Yes, we are pleased to have you. Okay, is there any old business that we need to take up? Oh, Sloan, we forgot the ordinances.
Well, that's new business.
Okay, all right. Well, it's new business and it's old business, so why don't we tackle that right now, and then we can decide where it fits. So Sloan and I previously had been working with Matt Bauman looking at ordinances for alternative energy, solar, wind, geothermal. Kind of looked at it a little bit, but we didn't pursue it because we sort of figured the status quo, if it was working, then perhaps, we wouldn't be suggesting an ordinance. But evidently the township has consulted with the township solicitor, who has drafted up a wind ordinance, a solar ordinance, and geothermal ordinance, and have sent it to us for review. So I think I circulated around to everybody by email. Sloan and I will take laboring ore to look at it critically and compare it to some of the models that are out there, as well as, ordinances from other localities that might be relevant. But to the extent that anyone has comments on it that you'd like to share, definitely send it to us.
I will. I told Sloan I don't think I'm in any position to make any, great contributions.
We welcome all comments, technical or otherwise.
Yeah, technical. I'm like, oh, this is out of my ballpark.
But particularly questions, Skip, if you have questions you'd like us to pose, please feel free to email us or let us know.
Yeah, I'd like to take additional time with them. I haven't had them that long.
Please.
I noticed some minor discrepancies from one to another. There's a permit fee mentioned in one of the ordinances, but not in the other two, and something about a security for removal, and yet the other two ordinances require removal as well. So, I'll put it in an email.
Okay, terrific.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And one of the things I noticed, and we've only had it for a short time, but I did notice in the solar one that there seemed to be provision for if you're going to put it on the back or the side of your house, that would be just fine, but nobody really wanted it in the front. And I kind of thought, well, gee, if we're going to encourage solar, then what's wrong with the front of the house? But we'll take a closer look at that.
That's right. I think that's right. We should consider how detailed these should be. These appear quite detailed, but is this necessary to get into that level of detail or not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think we should
Right,
look
and the
at
state
that.
has a few models, so we can see how they differ
I think
from
that's
that.
right. That's right. And I think one of the things that we're going to have to try to have the township balance is the desire to encourage alternative energy, at the same time not to infringe on a community or a neighbor, and make sure that it works for not only for the homeowner and the environment, but also for the community.
Right, and to recognize that all these technologies are rapidly evolving. So
That's
if we
right.
get too specific with any
That's
of them,
right.
it may
It
not
may
make
be-
sense in 2 years.
You may end up having to revisit it
Right.
repeatedly, whereas maybe a slightly broader statute wouldn't have to be tinkered with as much. But we'll have
take a
to.
look.
We'll get
Take a
into that
closer.
maybe the next time we.
Okay.
We're also looking at a green permitting
Oh, right.
idea, which would encourage folks to think about green building ideas in the permitting process. And one idea that we're considering is having the township review a permit application for green building ideas and techniques. If there are none in the application, the township would send a letter to the applicant and maybe to the builder or architect with a flyer of green ideas. There wouldn't be any requirement to follow those ideas, but it would be, please consider these, and then perhaps a time of a week or so for the applicant to think about it, and maybe to ask questions, and perhaps, if we're lucky, to amend the application to incorporate some of the green ideas. So we're looking at that, and also thinking about perhaps posting some of these green building ideas in a relevant part of the township website.
Gilly, can I just interrupt you for a second? Did you see the email that we got this morning from Matt?
No.
Okay, then I'm just going to stop you because Sloan had kind of bounced.
It says don't talk about the green ordinance.
No, it doesn't say that. But Sloan had bounced some of these ideas off of Matt, and Matt had responded. I think your email maybe was jammed up. I sent you a bunch this morning, too, that
Yeah.
you didn't get. That he had responded that one of the other suggestions that you had conveyed in addition to that was putting together, sort of just a brochure or something that
Yeah.
we could post near where the applications
Right.
are. And he thought that creating a brochure with ideas, alternatives to conventional options would be great. They could put it at the front desk and all, but
Good.
that there are some hurdles with regard to the first idea. He had said, because the International Codes Council, along with the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry, has not adopted any green standards, we can't enforce or even suggest other methods may be used. And along the same lines, we can't delay an application because UCC regulations state that residential permits must be issued within 15 business days and commercial within 30 days. As far as when green regulations go into effect, he's saying, it's going to be some time, even though changes are being made to the universe.
That was my first question was,
Yeah.
would this slow up, from the person waiting to get their permit through, which they've already kind of waited, if there was a sense that this was going to slow it up?
Right. What we
Right.
really need to do is get people
Yeah.
before they put the permit application
Right.
together. So I think
Right.
if we
Like the
can put
architect.
together a brochure or something that when they come in to get the application, or if they're downloading the application from the website, it's right there.
Right.
Consider these ideas.
Right, and we're not proposing under either of the ideas delaying the processing. So I think I'll definitely look at Matt's when it comes through, but we're not looking to delay anybody. We're not looking to enforce anything.
He seemed to be saying that they would have a problem even
Well,
suggesting
I
it.
think, I certainly will be very interested to see, but I don't think we'd be going so far as to be endorsing only one approach. But I think there are going to be some ideas that we could suggest as examples that people might need to think about.
Right, and I think
look
if we
at.
can do that right up front is what he's suggesting, and I think it's a good idea because when somebody's submitted a permit application, I think they're ready to go. I think they're anxious to go. So rather than having to hope they retool, if we can get them to think about it.
What happened with the idea long ago of even some kind of incentive structure for people doing green, expediting the permit process?
I think the reaction was that in our township, it doesn't take that long to get a permit. And so expediting it probably wouldn't be that much of an incentive. I think that was what we were told, that you usually get your permit within 2 weeks or something, some
Yeah.
short period of time.
I've talked to a few folks who felt that way, that it was, it
Yeah, I
wasn't
mean-
such a big, you're doing a big construction job. This was such a marginal additional cost. They didn't think that was going to move the needle. Plus, there's a revenue impact to the township, and I think there's also complications in terms of changing the actual taxing or permitting amounts. Skip's nodding. I think
That's what I was
not
thinking of
easy.
as an incentive, yeah.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to do. It may
Yeah,
be something we
unfortunately,
have to.
it's already efficient, so you can't.
It is.
promise
It is.
you're
And
sure.
I think.
And I can say it was. My experience
Right.
is that it was very reasonable.
I think one of the thoughts I have is, whether we post, whether we mail, whatever approach we take, I think one of the things would be interesting would be to try to measure whether there appears to be any increase in the number of green permits being filed over a period of time, so we can decide after some period of time, a year, maybe a little bit longer, do we have enough of an incentive? Or do we need to put more incentive somewhere around the process?
You're
that
saying to
people do?
evaluate it once
To
we get the
evaluate.
information out
Yeah.
there.
That's right.
Uh,
So once
also-
we have the information out, see how, maybe we set a baseline. There were 20% of the applications in the first year that had any kind of green idea at all. The next year, after we posted or we mailed or we did some combination, it was 25%. And then we can think, is that good improvement, or is that still pretty low given,
Right.
given the opportunity? So,
With Brenda's comment about, once you get to where you're actually applying for the permit, you're kind of far along. The question, having been through it, if that you had information on products, because when you get your permit, you haven't bought your hot water heater yet. You haven't,
Right.
done all of that. That might be a good time to learn about. If someone had talked to me about geothermal when my yard was dust, digging down 20 feet, I would have been
Yeah.
like, go crazy. Or, I know just a few years ago it was hard to get the instant hot water heaters. Even how those save space, let alone energy and all these other things. So just there might be might be more products, even shingles or insulation. I'm just, this is off the top
Right.
of my head, but if we can't get to the bigger things, maybe that's the time to give information
Yeah.
about the
Right.
heating and
Energy Star.
Star.
Yeah, and because EPA
waters,
has so many lists of
insulation.
these, I think it probably would be easy to do that because we wouldn't have to do the research ourselves. We can say, click here for all of the energy efficient things that
insulation made
EPA.
out of old blue
Right.
jeans.
Yeah, right.
But it's
Yeah.
it's all of those insulation, shingles, hot water heater,
Yeah,
all of those things that maybe,
right.
doors, storms, windows.
I think that's great.
Although I don't know
I'm
who's
coming
putting-
to this, kind of just today, so to speak, but is there a way, or is there any kind of green contractor association or certification thing? I mean, I know you can't suggest contractors per se, but maybe if that list is available upon request, people might avail themselves of that. I mean, it's hard to educate yourself from scratch about should I have a white roof or a gray roof, or can I have a green roof on my garage or whatever. But contractors that operate in the township that might seek some kind of certification, could you publish a list of certified green contractors and not call that an endorsement?
Yeah, I don't know if we could do that. I'm just sort of thinking out loud is that, some contractors get certification from the National Association of Home Builders has a certification thing, and then the U.S. Green Building Council, the homes rating system for LEED, excuse me, I believe they have their own certification. So there may be a few different ones, and I don't know whether perhaps we could say, here's a few, and then not necessarily endorsing one if we put several out there, maybe.
Or along those lines. I mean, as I recall from my own experience, the permitting process, it's really between your contractor and the township. Like, you don't
Right.
get involved unless you have to. But there could be some kind of correspondence that when someone puts in an application that these are the things you should look for, and send that to the resident. Because it
That's a
really
good point.
requires you
Right.
asking your contractor,
Right.
hey, what about, because if your contractor doesn't know about it, you're like, okay.
Right.
But if you say, ask them about these things, and either they need to get in gear and figure out what they are, or you may look elsewhere.
Right.
Right.
For
Maybe
the-
instead of a list of contractors, we could have handouts that say, this is the certification process for a green contractor.
Look for these,
Look for things.
or be aware
Like with an
that this
arborist,
is
look
a-
for this.
Yeah.
And I think ECA, the Energy Coordinating Agency, does some of this in terms of here are some contractors to consider. And one idea would be, instead of posting a list, it may be
Contact them.
maybe a process description of how to go about finding
Right.
a contractor who is green certified or expert.
And there's so many certifications out there. So ECA has one list. I think Keystone Help has another list. So
Right. So there
we
may
would
be
have to
some
kind of
resources
evaluate. Right.
without endorsing directly. There may be some resources people might say, oh, that's interesting. I'll look at those guys.
And you'll get the low, and you'll get the people kind of interested who were like, oh, I didn't think of that.
Right.
And it helps to have someone around
Right.
suggesting it at the time when you have to buy a hot water heater anyway,
Right.
instead of after you just
Right.
painted your house.
Mhm. All right, so let's put this on our list, Sloan, as soon as we get our ordinance review completed.
Yes.
Then let's turn to this, maybe put together a draft.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Does anyone have anything else? No? Okay, thank you again for coming, Skip. Great to have you here. Good to see you folks. All right, meeting adjourned.